with many of us present on different Indigenous lands, but that CILT is located in Toronto, the territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is also part of the Dish with One Spoon territory, a treaty between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, and allied nations. All of us present who were settlers, whether we and or our ancestors were born here or emigrated here from some other country, acknowledge that we are all settlers on these unceded Indigenous lands. We also recognize the impact of historical and ongoing acts of colonization and genocide inflicted on the Indigenous peoples of this land, and know that this recognition must also be clearly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise of truth and reconciliation real in our own lives and through decolonizing our disability justice work with guidance from Indigenous communities and leaders, while advancing real immediate action on the 94 calls to action. We also acknowledge that part of this colonization story are the stories of many people who did not come to these lands by choice, including the ancestors of settlers, who were brought to this land in chains through the transatlantic slave trade that colonized millions of Indigenous peoples across this planet. Lastly, we thank, honor, and stand in solidarity with generations of Indigenous people right up to the present, and commit to advancing a more equitable, just, and inclusive Canada for them and for all communities, especially those who experience multiple intersecting forms of oppression, including disabled, Indigenous, Black, and other people of color. Thanks, and miigwech. Thanks, everyone. And then next, we'll do some session guidelines, just so we're clear in terms of how we're going to conduct ourselves and be together in this space for the 2 hours we're here. So I'll be sharing some guidelines before passing it on to Elda Whitebird momentarily.
If I could also just make a quick access note for people.
Sure, go ahead.
So I put in the chat, anybody who wants to access the live captioning in a archived, if you want to go back and scroll back, the live captioning is in the chat. Anybody who requires ASL, we have Scout and Kimberly doing ASL interpretation today. Please let us know in the chat if you would like multi-pin or require anything else. When we move to breakout rooms towards the end of the session, we will ask anyone using ASL or captioning to identify yourself so I can keep you in the main room while everybody else goes into breakout rooms. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Appreciate it. Okay, session guidelines. So before we move on to speaker presentations, I'm sharing some guidelines. Did we introduce our captioners already and our interpreters? Did we do that?
I just did, sorry.
You did, okay, great, thanks. Okay, so this session operates according to the independent living philosophy, which means that all participants are responsible for ourselves, our actions, and how we communicate. In particular, we endeavor to maintain an accessible, respectful, supportive, anti-oppressive space for everyone present. For anyone wishing to access support during the session, for whatever reason, please message the host in the chat, and you will be invited to a private breakout room with a CILT staff member, Robin Simmons, who will endeavor to try and respond to your needs. For privacy and time management, everyone will be muted, and we'll have no video except for the host and speakers until the group gatherings in the last segment. This event is being recorded, as you know, but it will be paused during the breakout groups later on in our event. Anyone requiring to be multi-pin, please request that in the chat. And you can message the host at any time during the chat as well. For accessibility purposes, though, the chat is otherwise turned off to support the access needs of folks who use screen readers. And lastly, our first speaker, Lawanda Whitebird, will be conducting a water ceremony before she gives her speech on decolonizing disabilities. And that's it for our guidelines. If I miss anything, team, let me know. Okay. Okay, at this point, I'd like to say a few words about our first speaker, Lawanda Whitebird, before introducing her. Lawanda Whitebird of the Bear Clan is a member of the Mi'kmaq Nation from Afton, Nova Scotia. She's lived in Ontario for over 30 years and resides in Toronto, where she moved to work supportively with Indigenous people in the prison system here. Ella Whitebird also worked for Anishinaabe Health in Toronto for about 13 years and was instrumental in starting their traditional healing program, later serving as an outreach worker for the Ontario Aboriginal HIV/AIDS strategy. Wanda was one of the first Indigenous elders who embraced the practice of reducing harm without the requirement of behavior change. For about 20 years, as a leader with the Indigenous organization No More Silence, Ella Whitebird has led the annual Valentine's Day Strawberry Ceremony in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Toronto, outside police headquarters on College Street. Maybe some of you have been to that wonderful ceremony over the years. When Wanda became a wheelchair user around 2019, she extended her activism to the disability community. In 2021, No More Silence partnered with CILT on a project called Disability Justice and Indigeneity Project. And Wanda ran focus groups with many Indigenous community members who had experienced systemic and attitudinal barriers with accessing cultural and ceremonial spaces. And the project had a goal of building an accessible sweat lodge that disabled Indigenous folks can actually access for ceremonies. Ella Whitebird was deeply moved by the painful stories she heard and committed to advocating for Indigenous ceremonies to be barrier-free as a disability justice issue. And the Rio Renan Hummingbird Healing Lodge was built in 2023 at Six Nations on the Grand River territory. It's a physically accessible and heated sweat lodge that will run year-round, providing sweats, led by Ella Whitebird, and that also prioritizes sweats for people with disabilities, Indigenous people with disabilities. A really, really groundbreaking and exciting initiative. Wanda has spoken at CILT over the last 2 years and supported our reconciliation journey many times. Wanda, we at CILT are deeply grateful for your continued guidance and allyship. Thank you so much. I'd like to pass it on to you now to conduct your water ceremony and then to continue from then on to your talk on decolonizing disability. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David, for that great introduction.
You're welcome.
And I say the really awesome land acknowledgement.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's one of the better ones that I've heard, so I know you've been listening. Miigwech.
Thank you.
Oh, Bojo. Nani Madananga Kwene Dishnakas Makwadodem. My name is Dancing Star. I come from the Bear Clan. I'm a member of the Mi'kmaq First Nation, The territory I come from is a little place called Batangik, which is about 19 miles outside of Antigonish in Nova Scotia. I now live and work in the territories of the Mississaugas of Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Wendat. And for many other nations, Métis, Cree, individuals from all across Turtle Island, we call Toronto home. Today, I ask that we come together in what I would say, or what you've been saying, is a water ceremony, or Nibi, water. So if you have that glass of water beside you, I would ask you to look at it. Water is the most powerful entity on earth. We sit inside the womb of the life giver for 9 months before we come to this earth walk. And our first protector is water, because we know that that water flows before we're born. It is always something that gives life. Once we come to this earth walk, we can no longer take oxygen from water. And so water can also take life. But we also know that water also sustains life, all life. There is not a creature created that cannot live without water, or in water, around water. And we, as those that walk on 2 legs, cannot live without water at all. We must always drink what I call the gift of life. Water is life, and we must learn to care for it. When you look at that water, what it teaches us so many things. One is it can't hide anything. It teaches us the truth. Even in the deepest, darkest lake and ocean, it's the absence of light is the reason why we can't see through the water. It teaches us about integrity, because it does its work, even though we're not looking at it. Water begins its life at the top of mountains and comes down through the streams and rivers and lakes, and it works its way to the ocean. And if you put something in front of water, it doesn't stop it. It's determined, because it'll go over it, under it, or around it. But it will make its way home to the ocean. When we sweat, cry, that water evaporates and goes to the clouds. And when those clouds are full, that water returns to earth to nourish it, to feed the plants and the trees. So our tears and our struggles are transformed and returns to earth to nourish us. The power of water can't be stopped. And so when we meet water, wherever that might be, either going for a swim, giving birth in the ocean in the south, it helps us. You can make teas to drink. It helps with medicines that we take. But it is always there to look after us. So when times are tough, stressful, anxiety comes, PTSD, whatever puts a challenge in our lives, water will be there to help you. However you choose. A bath, a shower, a drink of water. But rely on that power of water and the medicine that has been given us. And think that too much water will destroy fire, and fire will evaporate water. So we must live within harmony of those two elements, in an understanding that to survive, we work together, and whatever that might mean. But one should not overpower the other. One should not destroy the other. But we must work together. And so, Creator, ancestors, I come to you today. I give you thanks for another breath of life. I give you thanks, Creator, for the people who have joined me today to hear the voices and the stories that people share with love and courage. Open the minds and the hearts of those who hear our voices to understand that we share our stories so that you understand and that we teach you something. We give thanks, Creator, today and ancestors for the water that you have given us. Our grandmother, the moon, who looks after the waters of Mother Earth. Our grandfather, sun, that warms us. Our father, sky, that is there, that we see. And at night, we see the stars in the universe. And we realize that we're much smaller than we think. And for our mother, the earth provides everything that we need to survive. She grows our plants, our trees, our food, but not without the help of us, because they create oxygen and we create carbon monoxide or whatever it is that we breathe out. And in reality, those two things are what keeps everything alive. We're connected to the roots of trees, to the branches and to the leaves. And there are many legends and stories that we teach our young ones to understand what all that is and what it means. So I say, miigwech to you, Creator, ancestors, for all that you have given us. And most importantly, for all the people who walk the earth, who are different, who are the same, whatever and wherever we meet another human being. Teach us to be kind, respectful, and loving. So miigwech, ni kanagana, all my relations, saho.
Thank you, Elder Whitebird. Appreciate that. And truly honor you for the water ceremony. Want to move on then to your speech about decolonizing disability. We're a bit behind. Could you take about 5 minutes to talk about that? That's a big topic to talk about in 5 minutes, I know. But we got a really tight timeline, and we didn't want to really stop your beautiful ceremony. So can
Very
you maybe,
quickly.
yeah, move on to that now?
Okay, so very quickly, I'll tell you
Thank you.
that I lost the use of my legs in 2019. And I discovered what disability justice is, what it actually is. And a part of that journey has been all the people who are part of this organization who invited me to rallies and other things. And what I realized that you're all my family. And I learned a lot, and I thank you for that. But the most important thing I learned through all of that is that this world is not accessible in an entirety for us to go where we want to go, to do what we need to do, no matter what. I know disabled is not really the term to use, but I'll just quickly use that, and I apologize. And so in that 5-year journey, I'm a ceremonial elder. And so what that means is I carry a pipe. I've learned along sweat lodge ceremonies, pipe ceremonies, naming ceremonies, all of those things in my community. But when I became disabled, I wasn't able to go to a sweat because I couldn't get in. And when I was in rehab, that's what you want to call it, I asked them if they could teach me to crawl, and they said no, that I had to learn to stand up. I said, oh, geez, I've been standing up my entire life. I don't understand. But anyway, they taught me to stand up, which I'll never use actually, but I built a sweat with the help of community. And I'm able to go in that sweat in my wheelchair and create a healing space for Indigenous folk that have been turned away from many ceremonial spaces because of no access, because of behavior. People like to talk loud. It doesn't really matter. No one was turned away from the sweat that I built, including transgendered, non-binary, and just plain people. There is no judgment ever on who you are, what you bring, including what you have in your body or what you might have in your pocket. Many of my people suffer from residential school trauma, first, second, third generation. And to deaden that pain, they might choose to use drugs. So what? That's their journey, and it shouldn't be judged. And no one, and I mean that, no one should be turned away at a place to pray. No one should be told that they can't pray. Because whoever we are and whoever we pray to, it's an individual choice that nobody can take from you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your community. I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you so much, Wanda. We certainly learned a lot from you during that project, and it really moved us to learn just how Indigenous people are really challenged with accessing ceremonial spaces. And it was a thrill hearing about the lodge being created at Six Nations. That was just an amazing news to learn, and it would be amazing for maybe we can talk offline about this. It would be lovely to go up there and see that sweat lodge at some point, given our
Yep,
collaborations. That would be wonderful.
you just took
So,
the words out of my mouth, David.
okay,
I'm
well,
inviting you to Six Nations, to the Disability Sweat Lodge that you helped create.
oh, thank you so much. That's wonderful to hear. Appreciate
And
it.
anyone else who's there just might want to come and see what it is beyond the land. We only have room for a couple of people in the van, but if you have a ways to get there, then you're all welcome.
That's beautiful. Thanks so much,
Good.
McWetch. Okay, and we're going to move on next in our program. So we try and get back. Well, we're pretty much on time. So my next task is to introduce our next speaker, who's Wendy Porch, my boss, the ED of CILT. Before Wendy takes on, I'll just give a brief bio of Wendy before she starts. Wendy has served in the role of Executive Director at CILT since 2018. She's worked in the fields of accessibility, disability, human rights, and education for more than 25 years, and is a lifelong disability rights advocate. Wendy started her disability rights work at Arch Disability Law Center and continued it as a research fellow in accessibility and educational media at the Open University in the UK. Before joining CILT, Wendy was a manager of episodic disability initiatives at Realize. She's also served as a member of the City of Toronto's Accessibility Advisory Committee and as chair of the city's Accessibility Task Force on COVID-19 vaccines during the height of the pandemic, up until last year. Wendy also sits on the Ontario Human Rights Commission's Community Advisory Group. Wendy's biggest job is being a proud mom to her son Jasper and works to raise awareness of the needs of parents with disabilities. Off to you, Wendy.
Thank you, David. And I just wanted to say thank you again to Wanda for getting us off to such a great start today, Wanda, and for sharing with us your wisdom and supporting us as we strive to do better at reconciliation here at CILT. And
Good.
thank you. And I would like to come with David if that offer still stands. So maybe we can figure that out. So, but thank you again.
Absolutely.
Great.
You can come.
Okay, thank you. Good. That's very exciting. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wendy Porch, and as David said, I'm the Executive Director here at CILT at the Centre for Independent Living in Toronto, also known as CILT. I am wearing a black and white polka dotted dress. I have long dark hair, and I was born with a limb difference, so I am a disabled person also, and I use she and her pronouns. I would like to start off by saying thank you to everybody, all of you, for being here from the bottom of my heart to join us in celebrating two very important events today. So as David mentioned, today is Independent Living Across Canada Day, and that is a day that is celebrated by all independent living centers across Canada, and it is particularly championed by our national organization, Independent Living Canada. And we are very lucky to have Frida Ewa here today, the National Executive Director of IL Canada, who will be saying a few words a little bit later. So thank you, Frida, for being here. Today is also the start of our CILT's 40th anniversary year. And this is the start of our celebrations, which is definitely cause for celebration. I think 40 years, 40 long years of a lot of work. So thank you for being here today to celebrate with us. So in June of 1985, there were some serious shenanigans going on in the disability community. There was some good mischief happening. And more specifically, a letters patent was granted for the incorporation, to permit the incorporation of the brand new Center for Independent Living in Toronto. And it was submitted by 9 enterprising community members who were looking for a new way for disabled people to live in the community and connect with each other. And we don't talk about these folks very often, but they are very important to all of us. They started our work, and I'd like to take a minute to read their names so we can think about them and honor them as independent living visionaries and as the founders of CILT. So we have Marilyn Farrell, David Humphrey, Maribeth Hunter, Susan Minetti, Marilyn Noel, Dick Santos, who I knew, Sam Savona, who many of us knew and who we lost last year, George Toller, and Bessie Weatherfield. And these were consumers who had a range of disabilities and social locations, but they all shared a common hope for independent lives. And from our letters patent filed by them, our first objective for CILT was, and I quote, to assist disabled people to function at their optimum level and in as independent an environment as possible. And I know that we all feel deeply grateful to them for their initiative and vision. Could we go to the next slide, please? Oh, I see. We're going on to the movie then. We don't have to go to the next slide. Thank you. Just to say that the Center for Independent Living in Toronto, CILT, is now the largest independent living center in Canada. We are rooted in the independent living principles of choice, dignity, and control. And we are a community resource center.
Anytime you want to do something, something happens.
Sorry, was that a comment, Robert, or was it just that you were unmuted? Okay, I'm going to continue. So we are a community resource center by and for disabled people. 40 years ago, when CILT was founded, and I think it's important to remember this, disabled people, like our founding executive director, Sandra Carpenter, and her sister Tracy, who is here today, were sent to institutions to live. Here in Toronto, not far from CILT's offices on Bloor Street, was the Home for Incurable Children, which was also ironically known as the House of Happiness, where disabled kids were sent to live year-round away from their families, simply because there was no support for them to live in the community. After much work and advocacy, we can flash forward to today, and although there is still not enough to meet actual needs, and this is significant, there are numerous supportive housing service providers in Toronto providing supports to disabled people to live in community. The direct funding program supports about 1,000 people across Ontario to hire and manage their own attendants in community and to keep them connected to their families. As well, all of CILT's programs, our core programs, our ASAC program, IDEA, our direct funding program, the GTA Disability Coalition, our peer and parenting program, service navigation, IL skills development, and honestly, I could go on here. We have more programs than that, but all of our programs support our vision of social and economic equity for disabled people. But there is much work to do. Poverty, inaccessible housing, a lack of jobs, and frankly, discrimination and ableism still impact our community's ability to live the lives they want. So we as CILT staff, the board and CILT members continue here into our 40th year with this important work to ensure that the lives of control, choice, and dignity are possible for disabled people everywhere. In its 40-year history, CILT has had 3 executive directors only. The first one was Sandra Carpenter, who was both the founding ED and who came back in 2000 to take the role on again until 2019. And she was an incredible champion. And we lost her shortly after she retired from CILT, but I think about her every day. A quote from Sandra that I often reflect on is, the first subversive thing I ever did was live. CILT also had Vic Willey as executive director, and he made significant contributions to formalizing the direct funding program, and he particularly worked to include young people in the IL movement. And for this, we have this Vic Willey Legacy Award that recognizes a young disabled person who is making contributions to leadership in our community. And then me, I'm the third one. And I have had the great honor to work with everybody here for the past 6 years to, in particular, try to navigate us through the very challenging times of the COVID pandemic era, and to acknowledge and recognize that those challenges continue to impact our community as we go forward. So we've had many consumer members and board members over the years. Several of our speakers today were on the CILT board at one time or another, and we have always had and will continue to have a dedicated and passionate staff team, and staff members who always put independent living at the center of what they do. So I'm very happy to open today's event and welcome you all here today for what will be an engrossing conversation about CILT and IL, from foundations to futures, from the beginning to where are we going next. And you'll also have an opportunity to talk to other people about all of those topics. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. And I really look forward to being able to connect with you a little bit later on. And happy anniversary.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Appreciate that great introduction. And now, folks, so we want to continue telling our story. And I'm really thrilled to say part of that story is our 4 great speakers, but also some video footage of that 40-year journey we'd like to share as well. We have 4 videos, and the first one is around the birth of IL, and then it moves on to the current times we're in right now. These videos were made with lots of hard work and the brilliance of one of our staff members here, Rehan Hussein, who pulled together some great footage of Disability Network video footage we've had here for years, as well as photographs. And we put together a bit of a montage of 4 videos. And so we would start first with video 1, the birth of IL. And I'll let the tech folks do a screen share, and we'll start that story.
There were no community services for people with disabilities. There wasn't any accessible transit. There was no attendant services in the community, and that often led for people living in institutions or long-term care.
And I don't really think people had an imagination for persons with disabilities being involved or included in society.
I don't know if people really realize that within our lifetimes, disabled people have been and were institutionalized.
Finding community in a world that didn't really see me as part of it was challenging.
So many people were essentially locked away.
The disability rights movement was started at the University of California at Berkeley in the 70s, and it was arguing for people with disabilities to define their own lives, like choices, and also they were the first group of people to establish personal care workers in the disability community.
I have more fun with them than I do in other spaces where I feel like I've got to always perform.
After the spread of independent living resource centers in the US, disability community advocates in Canada became fed up with ableist government systems, demanding being treated as full citizens, entitled to independence and control of their life choices. And the movement gradually led to the birth of independent living resource centers in Canada.
Somehow we did it. And then this movement happened, and it was like, oh, well, that makes sense.
That's our first video, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. I forgot to say the audio you hear is actually many CILT staff and some of our members who have talked about their reflections about that period in our history. So I hope you enjoyed that. We're running a bit behind, I'm told by the timekeepers, so we want to try and do some catch up. So one of the ways we'll do that is maybe be a bit more succinct with our bios of folks. We'll be having that for people after the event to be able to read. But first person up is Tracy Odell, who is going to talk about the independent living movement pre-CILT, the birth of IL. And Tracy Odell's the past president of Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, and also vice president of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities. Tracy has been a pioneer in the independent living movement in Toronto, was one of the pioneers around supportive housing and attendant services in Toronto, and really has been a great friend and supporter of CILT through the decades. And we're thrilled to have you here, Tracy, talking about that period, because you know it, you lived and breathed that period back in the day. So feel free to take it on right now and share the first decade. Go for it.
Great, thank you very much. We can go right to the first slide then. Thanks. I just wanted to talk about the birth of the independent living movement. Going way back to the 1800s, briefly, disability was always treated as a problem. In England, there was a notion of poor houses, where, we know through movies, many people were condemned to live because they couldn't pay their debts. And that model became a model of institutionalizing other people that were considered undesirable in a community. In Canada, we chose to establish asylums instead, and they were available for people who had psychiatric disabilities, physical disabilities, again, just people who were not wanted at home or could not be handled or cared for at home. These became a dumping ground for anybody who was unwanted, and were just generally the only thing available to provide other supports for people with disabilities. I'll move on to the next slide, please. So moving up to the previous century, we saw that people with disabilities were hidden away. Institutions were away from town, on the top of a hill, they were viewed as shameful, a place where you wouldn't want to go or be seen. Disability itself was considered a punishment or a curse, a misfortune by many. And so putting people in hospitals was the norm as we're approaching into the 50s and so on. Doctors would advise parents, this is what you do with your child. You just put them away and you forget about it and go have another. And there's only a few visionaries who were speaking out against this treatment. And one such visionary was Ed Roberts. He's considered the father of the independent living movement. He had polio at the age of 15, and he fought very hard to attend university. He had been in an iron lung all this time and receiving schooling and therapy and so on and there. But when he applies to go to the university and he was accepted on his merits, they didn't know at the time that he had a disability. If they had, they would not have accepted him. They tried to deny acceptance for him, but that didn't work. He fought too hard. And so he was allowed to come but to live in the health center at the university. And so other people with disabilities were also in the health center when they started their studies there. So he started a group. It was called, the Rolling Quads. And what they did was they supported each other, and in our way that we do. They repaired each other's wheelchairs. They referred personal care attendants that they knew. They offered peer mentoring for students that were coming to the university. And so by 1972, it gave rise in California to the Berkeley Center for Independent Living, believed to be the first of its kind ever. Okay, so there's a couple of familiar pictures, lots of advocacy going on in California, lots of connections to social movements around equality. And so there's close connections between groups of people united on the basis of social justice for race, for sex, for disability, and so on. We're moving into the 70s, the age of protests, and that was used, quite well in the States. So by 1978 in the States, they received an amendment to a Rehabilitation Act, which provided federal funding for the first time for the development of a national network. And this became a birth of a new model for people with disabilities. Rather than the medical model, we're starting to look at the community or social model for disability. So it was a real shift in the way of thinking, right? It was always like, oh, well, of course you can't read, you're blind. Or of course you can't dress yourself because you have this kind of a disability. You've got to be somewhere where you can be looked after, or you can be taught specially, right, to deal with your situation. Whereas the social model was more looking at, well, what is it that creates the disability in the first place? It might not be so much a disability as it's the design of something, right? A monitor that cannot talk to you, a book that cannot read out loud to you, a structure to provide services to help you get dressed and look after your basic needs, getting washed and dressed and so on. People with disabilities were seen as a solution, not the problem, and not, the object of scientific investigation as much. Yes, thank you. So we're moving into the independent living philosophy. Out of the community rights model, like really looking at our right to live in the community. In the States, there was a Supreme Court decision which we also paid attention to, the Olmsted decision, which, if I can just get my notes here, it supported the philosophy of a community rights model based on the Americans with Disabilities Act. The model of independent living also believed in the right for people to take risks. You have the right to make a decision. Maybe it's the wrong decision, but it's still your right to make that decision and to learn from it and go forward. So having the right to fail as part of the learning process was important. And as I mentioned, people learn from each other about how to live more independently. Next. One person who was kind of in her very strong advocate in other connected circles to us was a woman named Judith Snow. She had SMA type 2, like spinal muscular atrophy. So her abilities, changed over time, but towards the end were much like someone who was a high quadriplegic. She needed help with everything and, was not able to use her arms or her hands anymore. But she did a lot of writing. She's traveled around the world. She did advocacy, particularly around the need for people with developmental disabilities to have the right to live in the community and to be treated more humanely. And she's kind of a philosopher, in many ways. Some of her writings are quite interesting, and the story of her life is quite interesting as well. It's been committed to a short book, but if people are interested. But Judith Snow was quite involved with some of the changes that directly affected independent living. Next slide, please. Okay, we started to get into in the 80s and 90s, more an age of experimentation, looking at individualized supporters housing for adults, participation house, Cheshire homes for people with developmental disabilities and physical disabilities as well, large communities, and then into small group homes. Next slide. Okay, with Judith Snow, with
Tracy? Hi,
yes,
Tracy. You got about 1 minute to kind of
Okay.
put it together, if
Yeah.
you can.
yeah,
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
okay, great.
Go ahead.
But she got an order in council for 24-hour assistance, which set a precedence for others to do the same thing. And after 13 of these were served, the government became interested in how to put, the requests together into one service model. And so that provided a background for direct funding, which provided, as you'll hear probably later on, I won't talk too much about it now, but moving into a different model of services. Next slide. Yep, so we were becoming more autonomous, being able to live in the community, live our lives in the community, having, the different kinds of models built up usually from the interests of people themselves. Next slide. I kind of leave you with the notion of how hard run our rights were. It didn't just happen naturally. It took a lot of advocacy to win them. And, as a dinosaur now, I just really hope that these don't get eroded and that people can be vigilant about keeping the rights that we have won and to continue to have more as needed. And that's the end. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Tracy. It was quite a groundbreaking time, and you were in the center of it. So thanks for sharing that story. We wouldn't be here now without pioneers like you back in those days. Thank you so much. And now video 2, which has to do with the early years of CILT, sort of the establishing CILT as an IL center and presence. And so cue video 2.
It started as a small idea and it's turned into a significant portion of society.
The Center for Independent Living in Toronto was established 40 years ago through a long journey of advocacy and showing consumer need.
There was an opportunity to experience what I think lots of non-disabled people get to experience.
The opportunity and the choice to define my own life by the needs of what I need from my disability.
Making people with disabilities stronger and more confident in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights.
To be able to experience risk, taking risks, and the dignity of making mistakes.
The chance to be able to do all these things interdependent with my family and the community is really, really empowering for me.
I think it's evolved, and I think there's much more room for people to decide for themselves what independent living looks like.
I see independent living is that you have a car, and independent living is you're a driver in that car. So you have the keys, you are in the driver's seat, and you're making a decision of where you want to go, when you want to go, and how fast you want to get there.
So there you go, a little bit of a flavor of that period. Some great voices there. So our next guest speaker is Fran Odette. And before I turn it over to Fran Odette, who I know many of you in the room know, Fran's been in the community for decades, doing great work. And so I'll give a short bio of her and then turn it over to Fran. Fran Odette has worked for over 25 years in social justice and disability equity work. Fran has lived experience and has worked at and partnered with CILT throughout that time. Fran's work focuses on issues impacted women with disabilities and deaf women. She has co-authored a number of books. One, The Sexuality and Access Project, and the other, The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability for All of Us. What a spicy topic. I've read that book. It's a great book. Fran is committed to advocating for people with disabilities to live their lives with determination, self-determination, and agency. She teaches critical disability studies in the Assaulted Women's and Children's Counselor and Advocate Program at George Brown College, the Social Service Worker Program, and the Liberal Arts and Sciences Division. I give you Fran Odette. Fran?
Thank you so much, David, and such a pleasure to be here with everyone, many of whom are folks that I feel paved the way for my own learning and growth in this movement. So I'm going to talk about the decade of like 1983, 1992. And I have to say that, you know, sort of in the earlier days of CILT, when it was a small one-room office at Bloor and Avenue Road, I remember sitting around the table with Sandra Carpenter and Sam Savona and so many others that are not with us here today, who were incredible mentors and whose voices made a difference in change. And I was very much new to the movement, so I was more of an observer then rather than someone that spoke up. But I do remember during that time, my efforts to try and find community, you know, being around the table with others was a pivotal memory for me in the earlier days of CILT's beginning. I later had a chance to come back and be part of CILT as a staff member in 1993. And I worked as the individual advocate worker that was part of the independent living program. And I still then worked with so many folks that had been instrumental in both bringing about change, but also mentoring so many of us younger people who were wanting to think critically about disability and thinking about possibility in our lives. And those same principles around independent living were the ones that many of us were mentored around. And being able to see that the IL model was a delivery of resources that really did center disabled people as being the experts. And, you know, in the work that I did then, it was very much around individual advocacy and less so around political or systemic advocacy, but which is also very important in ensuring that our rights move forward. The framing of the work within individual advocacy was about building capacity to engage with the advocacy process, which many of us may have been really new to and didn't quite know how to go about to get the things that we needed. And also the role of the advocacy worker was to provide support to and to take direction from the person themselves in terms of what they wanted. So for many of us, the cannot narrative needed to be challenged. And this also included who was going to be doing that work. And so, you know, in preparing for today, there were so many things I wanted to touch on, but I also really had an affinity to certain themes. And as a young activist, and now as someone who might be considered an elder in the disability rights movement, these themes still are much part of my interest and desire to make change. So next slide, please. So, you know, Tracy talked about how there was a shift from, you know, centering people's lives through a particular model, the medical model, to then moving away to the social model and really seeing disability as a problem within the individual, as being a problem within the environment, and mostly within the environment, a problem of people's attitudes. And so we were moving away from the charity and pity narrative that was often associated with depictions of disability. I'm so sorry, folks. To promoting awareness of disability issues and ensuring that people had access to income, employment, housing, and access to the community. And for many of us at that time, the systems that existed were intolerable. We see the disability rights movement as, you know, being essential in terms of what was happening in the US, and also very much influencing the work that was happening here in Canada. The ways that our work occurred look different. 1990, 81 was the International Year of Disabled People, and the first ever international conference for disabled people was held in South Africa. And it actually, you know, marked the beginning of the international decade, of the United Nations decade for people with disabilities, and really had us focus on the situation and status of disabled people, thinking about increasing resources, improving access to education and employment, and also ensuring that disabled people were participating and contributing to community. Next slide.
Fran?
Yes.
You got about 30 seconds. Minu Sikan, you're up next. I know you might be wondering. Sorry, Fran, we've had a bit of a logistics issue, but just flagging. You got about 30 seconds to kind of tie it together if possible.
Okay, on this next slide, we have a picture of one of the programs that came out of those earlier days, the radio connection. We have John Southern, Susan Forrester, and Don Paramaki, both of all of whom were quite influential in ensuring that we were looking at disability representation through media, and ensuring that voices of disabled people were centered in creating those stories. Radio Connection provided an alternative to employment and allowed people to be able to direct their own stories and create them. Next slide. The Disability Network was also another opportunity for disabled people to have a voice over how our stories would be represented and created. And many times we were the ones that were creating those stories rather than having non-disabled people insert themselves in telling their stories on our behalf. Next slide. And so the fight continues, folks. It isn't over. We need to continue to be vigilant. This is something that CILT has always continued to do historically and also as we move forward. So I'm going to move this on to our next speaker, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Fran. Pleasure having you here. And you were one of those pioneers that got us where we are today. So much gratitude that you're still with us today. Our next speaker is Mino Sikant. Mino Sikant's been a friend of CILT for decades as well. Mino is the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Division at the Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility. Mino's led large organizations to dismantle ableism and racism and been an IL champion for more than 3 decades, dedicating her professional and personal life to advocating for the rights of people with disabilities. As a South Asian immigrant woman with a disability, she pushed the boundaries within the IL and women's movement to advance equity, accessibility, intersectionality for BIPOC populations, particularly in public policy. Mino's received many accolades, including the 2022 Founders Award from CILT. And in 2020, she was the first South Asian woman inducted into the Canadian Disability Hall of Fame. Welcome, Mino.
Thank you, David. You have a tough job of stopping people when they go over, so I'll be watching. But to be honest, I was so enjoying listening to all of our previous presenters. So thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Mino Sikant. I'm a South Asian woman with dark brown short curly hair. I have a blue background with the words National Accessibility Week now behind me. I am wearing an orange cardigan. Just description for those who cannot see me. I'm also a founder of Accessibility for All, an organization dedicated to amplifying BIPOC and disability voices. The parts you cannot see is that I have an acquired spinal cord injury and use a power wheelchair for my mobility. I wouldn't be able to start this presentation without remembering so many friends who I have made during my journey with IL movement: Sandra Carpenter, Victor Willie, Judith Snow, Sam Savona, Ian Parker, Fran Odette, and Heather Willis. So this is what I have, benefited in form of friendships as I joined IL movement. And I remember very excitingly, it was just yesterday, upon acquiring the spinal cord injury, I met Heather Willis on a Wheel-Trans bus. And when we start talking about our hope, aspirations, and the goal for our, how we wanted to live our life, she immediately turned to me and she said, there is an organization that just started, and it's called Center for Independent Living in Toronto. You must come and join us. A God-sent invitation. And joining CILT gave me a better understanding of my new identity, and it created a community where I felt included, loved, and belong. It was love at first sight, and it has not faded at all, even after 36 years. So as we celebrate 40 years, I have been part of this family, this community, this movement for 36 years, and I'm so honored. My personal and professional growth is very much attributed to my participation in the IL movement. And as Fran was going through her journey when she joined CILT as a young staff, I remember joining Fran and myself and winning a case against the Occupational Rehabilitation Act for their punitive and ableist legislation and its interpretation. So those are very fond memories of us as young advocates, but me learning to self-advocate for myself. And that is a skill that I have applied on ongoing basis, whether I am growing personally or professionally. So I'm so glad to see that CILT has survived and thrived for 4 decades and is a leader among other Canadian IL centers. I will say that it's even in North America, it is one of a kind center because we do have a very much focus on bringing allies together from other movements. So even though I am going to speak to you about the need for a cross-movement solidarity, I want to say that my experience that we have tried. Have we succeeded? That's a question. And the reason I'm asking that question we must ask as we move forward to celebrate another 40 and 50 years is when I look at the representation among its leaders, and I'm just not asking CILT, but even at IL Canada, where I have been very fortunate to be a part since late 1990s. When I go to the AGMs, when I go to the executive meetings, I don't see people who look like me and who represent the communities which if we look at the stats, according to Stats Canada, in 2023, there will be 8.3 million immigrants with permanent residents who will be living in this country. So that's 23% of the total Canadian population. So as you know, that the cross movement focus needs cross movement solidarity. So you must include people of different races, different immigration status into IL movement, who has benefited me tremendously, but it should be benefiting that 23% that we are talking, because disability cut across all race, gender, and abilities. We know that. So we are sort of like what I see as being an executive lead at the local level with CILT, as well as with IL Canada, where I have been, in an executive lead for many, many years. We are truly a gem, but we keep it to ourselves. We're very comfortable in our disability communities. And I still remember fondly, many of the friends that I mentioned, they taught me many things. But there were some times when we were at odds, even though I remember working with Anda Ronaldi and bringing in a multicultural policy to CILT, but I think it's been shelved. As I don't see that increase in outreach and impact within those community that we call multicultural. So, as a movement, we are only sustainable if we continue to grow. And we continue to reach out and making sure that inclusion is not selective inclusion. We do reach out and invite those community who may not be benefiting from our, truly, truly remarkable growth that we just all have talked about. So I feel like I'm a beneficiary. I also feel like I'm a leader here. I feel like a child and a parent within this movement. And I think within a family, I should be, really encouraging the new leaders to take a look and saying where we can grow as a movement. But not only that, it's going to benefit those communities. Remember, these 23% of the population, and this is what the new immigrants, but there are first, second, and third generation immigrants here now. They will be delivering your services. They will be the policymakers making policy for you. So including those community in your conversation is also going to result in benefiting all of us, because they will know what disability justice means. They will know what accessible customer service means. So we need to reach out and teach them and make sure that they are part and parcel of the progress. They understand the rights of persons with disabilities. So as a doctor, as a service provider, as your attendant, they can serve the best knowledge that they have about IL movement. So I think we are at a crossroads, but I am so happy to be part of this journey for past 4 decades. And I could very proudly say that I have attended every decade celebration. So you know, I am a party person, so I always am there. But same time, I am so hopeful for this organization, which is a leader, by saying that continue to include everyone and reach out to those who may be falling through the cracks and gaps, as they also need to understand their disability identity. As many years ago, you helped me to understand my rights, helped me to take agency over my body. And that message was needed then, it's needed now. And that outreach is more than ever, that's something the new leaders need to take into consideration. Thank you so much. And happy birthday, CILT, and happy birthday, IL Canada.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Meena. You're part of the birthday party. And you are a party animal. You come to lots of our AGM parties, after parties. So thanks so much for all your collaboration and your partnership, particularly around advancing ethno-racialized people with disabilities and their inclusion in our movement. So thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. Next up is another video. Am I right? Are we queuing up one more video, folks?
Yep.
The third one?
There seemed to be this pushback for fear that if we started looking at other locations of people's identities, that would take us away from the main cause. There would be sort of
Sorry, I'm just having a problem with my screen. I'm gonna restart it.
There seemed to be this pushback for fear that if we started looking at other locations of people's identities, that would take us away from the main cause. There would be sort of almost a clamping down even further on saying that we need to fight for what we have right now, and those other issues we'll get to later.
An awakening kind of occurred, and voices found ways to be heard. And I think society itself was ready to finally open up opportunities to marginalized people.
Nothing about us without us. Providing services that are informed by us, the services that we need. We are the experts. We know what we need.
Like the very fact that a program like direct funding has been so successful over the years, has continued to grow so much, I think is a victory.
CILT has definitely moved in that direction. We're really looking at intersectionality from a critical perspective.
The independent living philosophy and disability justice principles need to continue the movement of people with disabilities from an intersectional lens, from a cross-disability lens, and a cross collaboration of non-disabled people to help us fight for our basic human rights and to make society more accessible for all people, make it universally accessible for everyone.
Yay. Thanks for that video. Next person up for us is our last speaker, actually, Janet Rodriguez. I'll do a brief bio and then turn it over to you, Janet. Janet Rodriguez, by she, her pronouns, is a racialized cisgendered immigrant woman living with visible and invisible disabilities, a professional interpreter. Her own journey of illness and disability has informed Janet's passionate work to dismantle systems that harm vulnerable people in the healthcare and health education systems. Over 14 years, she's been a health mentor with the Cachet Interprofessional Education Program. She co-chairs the Disability Inclusion Work Group at Timothy Faculty of Medicine at U of T. And Janet's been part of the expert group for social prescribing with the Center for Effective Practice. So a lot of health equity work Janet has been doing for quite a long time. She's joined the Equity in Health Systems Lab as part of the team's primary care project. She's learned from and with fellow disability justice advocates and is currently co-leading the Accessibility for All, a social justice project at her family health team. Wow. Janet is also a great friend and ally of CILT for many, many years. We value her a lot. So off to you, Janet.
Let me unmute. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I am renewed after hearing my predecessor speakers because I have learned so much from them. Somebody said, meeting people at Wheel-Trans. I met David on a Wheel-Trans ride. I met Franadette at a Wheel-Trans ride. So, you know, community is really small. Well, my name is Janet Rodriguez, and I have a short brown hair, brown skin, dark eyes, and I'm wearing glasses because I'm of that age. And I'm wearing very glitzy little earrings as well. As a trained language and translator interpreter, I used to earn my living with words. Words carry power. And I acknowledge that language is always evolving, as we have seen, starting with Wendy, how the words that were used to define us have gone through a transformation. In my journey as a disability advocate, I have also learned about words and what they mean and their power, such as the difference between equality and equity. I learned about ableism. I learned about internalized ableism, anti-oppression, colonialism, anti-Black racism, and most importantly, disability justice principles. My first contact with CILT was in 2011 through a very dear friend, Melissa Graham, who's now the executive director at Manitoba League for People with Disabilities. Shout out to Melissa. Together, we organized the very first Toronto Disability Pride March in October 2011. And now we have passed the baton to a new generation of fantastic organizers. I also went to CILT to attend a program called SEED, which is Safe Engaged Environments Disability. And I met a lot of interesting people, and many of them are still friends and collaborators today. The most important thing I learned through CILT was self-advocacy, and I've spread it wherever I go. It's such an important tool for life. Around the same time, I met advocates and activists for disability inclusion, where I went to school at Ryerson, and I also met folks from the ethno-racialized People with Disability Coalition that we lovingly know as ERTCO. Everything I learned, I disseminate and give credit to my community of cross disability. One important thing that has happened in this last decade, and we can just not go over it because it practically has taken half of this decade, is COVID. And the worst outcome for people with disability who had COVID has not fully been researched. We have had to, for those of us who are advocating in healthcare, we have had to rely on studies, partial studies done in the US or in the UK, even Australia. And that is one of the things that it's a huge gap in our reality in this decade, where there's more and more talk about accessibility and disability. But I also have to give a shout out to CILT and especially Wendy, because through their intervention, we were able to have an accessibility vaccine program, and ERCO was a proud partner. I've seen changes also in my few years as a volunteer patient partner. For the last 15 years, I've been volunteering. I started that when I was still using a wheelchair. I was a full-time patient, going in and out of hospitals for surgeries and treatments, and spending half of my day scheduling appointments and taking medication. So I was invited to be a health mentor, to educate students from various health-related professions, and I shared my lived experience about my diagnosis, my disease, my symptoms, my medication. In a word, it was a very medical model that we have heard of from the previous speakers. But after learning and being educated from my peers, especially from the community, I started to shift the narrative. So when they ask me, in a scale of 1 to 10, where's your pain at? I would tell them, well, this morning when I woke up was at 4. But because I don't have money for the bus, I had to walk all the way here. Now my pain is at 9. So am I in pain because of the disease, or am I in pain because I don't have money? And I started to learn that we have to see things from an intersectional perspective, from looking at the person's social locations. I was doing this and I did not know, I learned later, that all of these social barriers are part of what is known as the social determinants of health. I also started to share with them that even though I was still receiving my bills at 100%, due to my disability, I had to stop working. And now my income was only half. So poverty was a real thing to me. And the financial distress was no different from disease stress. So I tried to educate the educators as well. And one of the fabulous things that has really enriched me is that I continue to see more and more initiatives about accessibility that are led by people with disability, people in business, in education. AMI, kudos to AMI. They do amazing work in disseminating the work that people with disabilities do. And also a lot of digital applications that have been created for and by people with disabilities. This cross-disability movement was an important concept because even though my disabilities were mental illness and mobility, I wanted to learn about what was the experience of all other people, how do they experience this? So then when I do my advocacy, I can include that experience as well. Let's go through the years. And in the year 2019, the Accessible Canada Act was enacted. Some people say with consultation of community. I had to travel all the way to Hamilton to make a consultation because they never went to my corner of the world. The goal is to create a Canada without barriers by 2040. I hope that we can all be part of it in making it happen. One of those barriers that I was encountering was poverty. So I joined the Disability Without Poverty movement, which is a grassroots nonpartisan movement, as a volunteer. And in 2022, we went to the Hill with a whole bunch of people with disabilities to, hear what the politicians have to say. I'm happy to report that last year, the Canada Disability Benefits Act was approved. I'm also disappointed to share that the announcement made by the federal government is that we are going to have up to $200 a month, which is, as we know, very precarious for an already difficult situation. And with the final point that I want to make in my journey as an advocate for accessibility, anti-ableism, especially within the healthcare services, is that I have to start to notice an important change, and is that doctors with disabilities have started to talk more about disability. Who gets admitted to the university to be a doctor? What are the standards? How are they going to study? Can they study full-time, part-time? So the Canadian Association of Physicians with Disabilities is really leading this work, as well as other doctors in the States. And if you love podcasts, I encourage you to check the Docs with Disabilities podcast, because they are bringing these issues to the forefront.
Janet, I didn't have to give you a minute flag, I think. Are you done? This is a great way to end, I think, your speech.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Great to have you. Great to have you as a friend and comrade of CILT. Thanks so much for being here. And folks, we're trying to get back on time, so our last video is queuing up now for you. People with disabilities remain structurally shut out of inclusion in our society.
Here we are in 2024, but I do feel in some ways we've gone back into the medical model.
We know what's happening, where people are not getting the supports to be able to live in their homes and are having to make some very, very difficult decisions.
I still hear of students who have to fight their universities just to get proper doorways, and I find it amazing that it's still something to fight for, or has to be fought.
All our governments still build inaccessible housing where many disabled people can't live and age in place. They keep disabled people unable to work in legislative poverty.
We need to continue to empower people with disabilities so that they can have choices to live in the community that they want to. That's about living with dignity.
Several organizations and networks are cross-collaborating and organizing to influence government policy and investments in disabled people.
CILT as an organization has come a long way too. We continue to evolve and we will continue to evolve.
CILT has partnered to try to push for changes with income security, supportive housing, social justice, people having their human rights, accessible housing, and attendance services in the community.
One thing that is clear is that there is still much work to be done.
For independent living to have an empowered future, all aspects of society must be of the same mindset.
That's it. That's all our videos and not quite all our speakers. Wendy's going to introduce our final speaker in a moment. Off to you, Wendy.
Thanks, David, and thank you to everybody that's spoken this afternoon too. I just wanted to say that last picture was of CILT winning the City of Toronto Community Champions Award, which is really cool, and I just wanted to let everybody know in case you didn't hear about it already. So it was a pretty amazing thing. And it was mainly for being in partnership, working in partnership with people. So we're very proud of that. So I would like to just introduce Frida Yua, who is the National Executive Director from IL Canada. Frida and I met for the first time at the IL Canada AGM last September. And I don't have a bio for Frida, but I can tell you that I know Frida is a very experienced executive director and community leader. And she really wanted to come and pass along greetings from IL Canada to us today. And Frida, I would just like to invite you to unmute and put your camera on and pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you great. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having me. And thank you, David, for being such an amazing MC so far. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you at CILT for having this set up here today and for having me all together. Thank you to all the speakers and presenters before me for sharing so much from your wealth of experience and your knowledge. It's been really insightful. I just wanted to also mention Tracy Odell. Thank you for that in-depth expose on independent living movement through the years. That was really, really insightful. And Minu, I'm here just so you know. I know you mentioned us and I'm here. So thank you for sharing as well. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frida Uwa, and I am the National Executive Director of Independent Living Canada, of which CILT is a visible part of. To describe my presenting self here today, I am a Black woman of African descent. I wear my straight kinky hair to the back, slightly falling across the sides of my face. I am wearing a floral shirt in the colors pink, lilac, and orange, with a lilac jacket over it. I am wearing a pair of glasses as well today, and I'm joining you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Please indulge me as I read to you my goodwill message to CILT. Okay, let me pull that up here, okay? So on behalf of Independent Living Canada, I am delighted to extend my heartfelt congratulations to CILT on the occasion of your 40th anniversary. This significant milestone is a testament to your unwavering commitment and remarkable contributions to the independent living movement in Canada, which we celebrate today across Canada Day, coincidentally, and I'm so happy to be here to share this day with you, CILT. For 4 decades, CILT has been a beacon of empowerment for people with disabilities, embodying the principle for persons with a disability and by persons with a disability. CILT stands as a model of consumer control and community-based resource provision, helping countless individuals with independent living skills and integration into the community with dignity, autonomy, and consumer-led initiatives. Wendy's leadership, and indeed all CILT staff members' dedication to the philosophy of the independent living movement, which prioritizes empowering individuals, has been nothing but revolutionary. You continue to foster an environment where individuals can examine options, make choices, take risks, and learn from their experiences. As a leader in the direct funding program and a cornerstone of the independent living network in Canada, CILT has made an indelible impact on our community. Your efforts have empowered many to lead independent and fulfilling lives, as specified here today, and have set a high standard for service even among the IL network. Congratulations once again on this remarkable achievement. We look forward to many more years of partnerships and progress as we continue to work together to advance the rights and opportunities for people with disabilities across Canada. From all of us at the National Office, happy 40th to all CILT consumers, staff members, management, and board, and happy IL Across Canada Day. With warm regards, Frida Uwa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Frida. It was so nice to have you here with us today, too, and so great to hear from the National IL Canada movement, too. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Wendy.
Great, and we will catch up again soon, I think.
For sure.
So, you know, in the old days, I think at this point, what we would have done is we would have had a social time. I think we would have had a coffee break. And, you know, because we always had really good food, I think, at Silt Things too, right? We'd have a little bit of a coffee break. We would sort of wander over to somebody that we didn't have a chance to talk to yet. And we would have a bit of a chat through, you know, the things that we've heard about and you know, probably talk about some current events. We'd probably be talking about the Canada Disability Benefit for one, but we would have a catch up. So what we were hoping to do today is actually provide you with an opportunity to do something similar. We had actually, can anybody see me, by the way? I don't know if you can see me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you can. Okay, good. Because I can't see me, so I wasn't sure. What we're going to do today instead, we were going to do a whole bunch of breakout rooms and everybody was going to get to kind of hang out in a room with everybody else and talk through some of these questions. But given that we've kind of run over time, which is not a surprise because I think that happens for us every time we do this. Given that we were over time, I think what we're going to shift to doing instead is actually just having a big group discussion. So we're going to have a bit of a social time now. Our community has been through a lot. You know, we have been isolated. We've been through a pandemic, the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. We've been on our own a lot. So we thought it might be nice just to have a bit of a chat at this point. And these are some of the questions that I was hoping that we could kind of respond to. So, and you know, if folks are feeling, like they would like to share, I'd love to hear from anybody here. So that's everybody in the room. That's not just speakers. It's everybody who's been here and who's been part of CILT and part of the movement and connected. So some of the questions, why are you here today? And maybe reflecting yourself on some of these questions. Why are you here today? Is it to celebrate CILT? Is it to connect with your friends, some of your champions that you've known for a long time, people in the movement, or is it something else? And we've heard a lot today about CILT's accomplishments, and those are community accomplishments, right? They're not CILT's accomplishments, they're community. Oh, hi, Karen. It's nice to see you too. Another champion of our community as well, and somebody who was there from the very early days, Karen Yoshida. So thinking about everything, what stands out for you from the decades of work that community has done here as the most significant accomplishments related to IL? What, you know, sort of, when you think about that, what comes to mind? What are some of the accomplishments or things that you heard today that surprised you? Is there anything that was a surprise for you? When do the values of IL show up in your life? How does IL manifest itself? And how do they appear? When you close your eyes and think of independent living, who appears and why? This is a very interesting one. For me, it's Sandra. When I shut my eyes and think of independent living, it's Sandra Carpenter right here. And it's almost that picture, that last picture in one of those videos of me and my kiddo out with Sandra. What have been the funniest moments for you in CILT's 40 years? I'd like to hear from some of the folks in the room about that. What does the future of IL look like? Where do we go next? I think we've heard a little bit about some of that. And what does CILT look like in the future? So we've got some hands up. So Susan, I think you were first. Did you want to go ahead first and tell us what question you might be responding to and just tell us what you're thinking? Susan Kavanaugh? Can everybody, is it possible for everybody to?
Should be fine. I've asked Susan to unmute. We can't unmute Susan, but you're welcome to unmute yourself, Susan, if you're, or you can put something in the chat if you prefer.
Susan, while you work out, while we maybe are able to support you in unmuting, maybe we'll see, Linda, if you want to go next. I saw you put your hand up right away too, so take it away. Any of those questions, any thoughts you want to share with us?
Yeah, so congratulations to CILT on 40 years. And for somebody that works in disability rights outside of the GTA, one of the things that that is always, I think, leaves me thinking, geez, I wish I lived closer to CILT, is how can we promote the independent living movement outside of the geographic boundaries of, so I live in Brantford, for example, very close to Wanda, and I will be having a little trip down to see the accessible sweat lodge, but she's only about 20 minutes away from me. But really, when I talk to people, even about direct funding, which I am a self-manager, but in our community, the concept of independent living, even the concept of direct funding, is just not known because geographically we're not connected to a center for independent living. So I'd like some thought processes around, you know, how do we expand the work of the independent living movement outside of large geographic centers that have independent living centers?
Mhm. I'm not sure that I have like a really great answer for you, but I think that it is a question that we have been engaging with at CILT as well. And you know, not just geographic boundaries, but boundaries around communities. So I think, as Manu was talking about earlier too, we did an equity audit at CILT, and we looked at the communities that we're reaching, and we are not reaching everybody. And so we are being very intentional about that work. Now we have an equity plan that we've put together to try to ensure that our outreach, and we've got another plan, in fact, for DF too, to make sure that newcomer communities and other ethno-racial communities are aware of the program and are in a position to be able to apply and benefit from it as well. So there are a lot of, I don't know what the answer is, Linda. I think it's a brilliant question. And we're doing work at the moment to try to expand our outreach efforts, but more needs to be done. There's no question that more needs to be done, I think.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very important point that you've raised.
It's Susan. I
Hi,
finally
Susan.
unmuted myself, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
So the reason I participate today is to say thank you to CILT, because without CILT, particularly through COVID and all the different changes that have occurred with the independent living philosophy somewhat having been lost in the organizations that support us. Without CILT, I don't think we'd be doing as well as we are. And having as much of a voice as we do without the support of CILT. So thank you for that. And I would like to say, along with everything else that's been said, I agree with all of the speakers. There needs to be more movement so that even the people supporting us, I mean the organizational management teams supporting us, understand what independent living is. I think that's been, as I said, lost in the sense that they're more focused on the business end and satisfying government requirements than they are on the quality of life for the individuals they serve. Also, I'd like to see the movement making themselves more open to the younger generation so that this movement moves beyond our generation, because everyone here is aging, and unfortunately wisdom comes with age, but we need to let the younger generation know, and the parents of the younger generation know, that independent living can and will still continue after we're no longer here to fight for them.
Thanks, Susan.
Susan,
Thanks,
yeah.
Susan.
I hear you 100%, and I think we're all thinking the same thing. Like, how are we going to, how do we connect with young people in a way that is meaningful and that means that this idea and this movement is maintained across time? And so it's certainly something that we've been thinking about a lot here at CILT, and I'm glad to hear that we have been able to provide some additional supports in terms of keeping the movement alive. I think that, you know, we heard in the video, I think it was Robin that said it feels a bit like we're moving back into the medical model, right? And that's certainly something that we've been very vigilant about here too. So thank you for sharing with us, Susan. It's nice to hear from you. I'm glad that you're here today.
I'm sorry, I don't have a camera, so I
That's
can't
okay.
show my face.
It's great to have you here, though.
Yeah, I did also want to
Hang
say.
on, Susan, just hang on a second. Just aware we have 3 minutes left. And we
Okay.
need to make sure the ASL interpreters get out on time. So if you want to, I know, Amanda, you want us to kind of close off, make sure we have
That's
enough time
fine.
to finish.
I can finish. I'm done.
Thanks.
Thanks, Susan. And sorry, I was just going to say, I saw, oh, John Massa, you are not muted. I can hear you. Susan, thank you very much. Victoria, I saw that your hand went up too, and I'm sorry we're not going to be able to get to you today. Maybe it's something that you could put in the chat for all of us to have a look at too.
Sure.
I will pass it back to David, to you, just to kind of, are you closing us out or is it me? It might be me.
You are closing us out, Wendy.
Me, okay. So just to say thank you, everybody. I know we've got like just a couple minutes left, but this is our first event of our anniversary year. So, you know, when you have like a birthday and you say it's my birthday weekend, maybe it's just me, but that's how I do it. This is our anniversary year, so it's our 40th year. We will have a number of ongoing events that we will invite you to join us at, to talk through independent living, to reflect on our history, really to think about what the future looks like as well. We're very excited about celebrating 40 years. If you would like to stay in the loop, please sign up to our mailing list on the CILT website. And better yet, please become a CILT member. We are a member organization, and so you would be involved in our AGMs. You would have some say in how we do things around here. So if you'd like to become a member, there's also a membership application on our website. Our next event is we're going to have an AGM, obviously, in October, and if you're a member, you'll be invited. We also will have an event for the UN Day of Disabled People in December, and we're working towards a large community event next spring that I'm picturing with tents and a stage and art and performances and all kinds of stuff. So please stay tuned for that. But in the middle of all of that, we'll also have smaller engagements that we'll be reaching out to you about. We've heard today from champions, we've heard from people who were involved in the beginning of the movement. There's a lot of work still to be done. A lot of work has happened, and there's a lot of work still to be done. And we need community now more than ever. So please keep on keeping on. Join us in the fight, the ongoing fight for equity for disabled people. Please give us feedback as well on what you thought of today. There's a feedback form that will be shared, and we'll put that in the chat too. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our members. Thank you, Wanda, for being here. Thanks,
May I
everybody.
say,
Go ahead.
I just want to give a teaching about a closing. And it's not about a closing, but it's about a new beginning. It's about moving forward from this time and place, taking with us the friendships we have made, the wisdom that we have learned, and to continue moving forward. Also, thank you all for the most precious gift that we can share each other, and that's the gift of time, because that's the only gift that we can never take back. So my grudge to all of you for your gift. My grudge.
Thank you, Wanda. And I have nothing to add to that. That's a wonderful way for us to close. Thank you, and thank you to everybody for your time today. And happy anniversary.
Thanks to our interpreters and our captioner for making